How you doing, y'all? Peace, y'all. Good to be with y'all. Good to be with y'all. Uh, I wanted to dedicate this channel, right, into the history of salsa. A lot of people, they know that salsa is a Puerto Rican festive music, right? And they know that that's our flavor. And that's our genre, right? That genre is unfortunately not as popular as it once was. But as a former musician, I want to give you not only the storyline behind salsa, but what it really actually is. So, like everything, we got to go to the origins. We got to go to the mid 60s. We have to go around 63, 64, and what was going on there. But before we make that stop, we're going to listen through our imaginations to what the 50s were playing while they had their doo-wops and their form of rock and roll, right? They also had what we know as mambo. And mambo and cha-cha-cha and those things are from Cuba. That is a Cuban rhythm and a Cuban sound. That's you got your mambo, your cha cha cha, your guajira. All of those are different forms of Latin Cuban music, with of course Africans drums incorporated, along with your brass, which is your trumpets, your saxophones, and your trombones and stuff, and you have your strings. Your strings are your cello, your bass, your violins, things like that, and then you have your flutes, your clarinets. You know, it all depends what type of band you had back then, but in the 50s it was big band salsa. So big band, I'm sorry, I take that back. It was big band mambo, mambo swing. That was what was going on in the 50s. Now, a lot of musicians in Puerto Rico at that time, bomba en plena is really our thing. Bomba en plena is the pain and the suffering of the impoverished areas in Puerto Rico. It's like the Spanish hip hop, okay, at the time. That's where plena came from. Plena is talking about all the pains in the barrio and all the ills in the barrio and the pimps and what's going on in the barrio. It's like the news, right? In the form of in poetry. That's what you got. Bomba and plena. You know, these two go together hand in hand. It's just the rhythm, the rhyme, and the reason. So now we speed into the early 60s, and New York is booming as far as the nightclubs. They're looking for Latin talent because the Latin talent it's becoming mainstream. Now clubs are starting to, because the dance, people wanted to learn how to dance cha-cha-cha. They wanted, this was before salsa. They wanted to learn how to do the cha-cha-cha and the mambo because the women love that kind of, that movement rather than your regular two-step or whatever they were dancing back then. This was a faster, more romantic type of way to dance. So this captivated a lot of musicians in Puerto Rico, right? And they started to change the frequency in the music as far as from slow songs and sad songs to uh, good stuff that was happening in the streets. You know what I mean? Like I guess you could say like the benefits of like being a Robin Hood. You see what I mean? Like they were talking Robin Hood theme songs. With that say, I'll just say there were songs that had a storyline. Like starts bad. I mean, it starts good, but it ends bad or whatever. And then you had your songs what that were more musically inclined, where they will get each important. All of the band is important first of all, but the pianist and the bass, without them, the band is nothing. So what they would do is give each of these guys their own solos, okay, and then they will give them their own solos, 2 to 3 minutes, and then the singer will come on and he would improvise from his head, which is known to a lot of us here in America as freestyle. So freestyle became popular. And that's how you had guys over here in New York, like Willie Colon, who at 15 years old played a trombone at a college level. He started his own band. You see, and other musicians in New York started their own bands. Eddie Palmieri, Charlie Palmieri, his brother, may he rest in peace. You had Ray Barretto. You had Roberto Roena just coming from Puerto Rico, coming over here. Malvin Santiago, he was singing for other big bands, that were getting notoriety because again, the clubs wanted to hire the best of the best, and these people were the best of the best. So now, comes between 65 and 70 is where salsa's born. Salsa's born roughly about between 65 and 70. That's when, and who coined the phrase? As far as I know, is Johnny Pacheco. Johnny Pacheco is the guy who basically he's what Africa Bambaataa is to history, to hip hop in history. He took uh, salsa music and made it global. He made it so it could be again exploited, but it needed the notoriety so that talent could be showcased. It was talent that it was a sound nobody had. So he looked at it as a gumbo because he had all these different flavors of groups, right? And he would put the best of those groups together, right? And this sound that they come up with, it was different than it had son montuno in it. It had little mambo in it. Dun, 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 dun. See, it had a lot of rhythms, different rhythms that were incorporated, but then they would add the singer freestyling on there. That was something new. Cubans didn't do that. Cubans sang the song and had their little solos. This was something the singer sang the introduction of the song, and then he had his bars in between every chorus line. This was the birth of salsa with all these musics, all these different flavors infused. And in the 70s, especially 71, 70, 71, like the Palladium, Studio 54, my mother and my dad used to frequent these clubs, and this is where salsa was at its peak. And this video, I'm gonna continue giving you some names and positive aspects of this salsa, this boom. This took a lot of Puerto Ricans that were coming from the island over here and gave them opportunities. Now, a lot of them Puerto Ricans, they were unfortunately unsupervised and took a wrong path and died early, but their music still lives. We have superstars like Hector Lavoe. He'll never die. He'll always be in our hearts. But we know this. Um, they exploited him for every single dollar. So I'm gonna make a part two. I'm gonna give you names and I'm gonna give you the breakdown. I just gave you the birth of salsa. Now I'm gonna give you the adolescent on the second video. His salsa's adolescence and how salsa grew up. So this is part one, the birth of what salsa and who's responsible for making it global. Because he played the flute, Johnny Pacheco, and he had a little mambo swing in his music, Tito Puente style. You know, see a lot of people say salsa, Tito Puente. Tito Puente was against salsa. He came to a point where he accepted it, but for the most part, in the early days, they asked him what was salsa. He said, I don't know, tomato sauce. So we took it as an insult, Puerto Ricans. But we still love Tito Puente because he was the pioneer. He was one of the pioneers in the late 50s that put it down. He had the illest solos. So if you like this channel and you're into like salsa music specifically, like, share, subscribe, and let's have some more conversation about this. Cause I feel it has to be recorded. This story has to be recorded. It's very important to our people who these people are and what they meant. And part two is coming next. On this part two,